very funny, but what is your like honest take on like all these groups in the drama and whatnot? I actually really want to know. Now that you came on, I want to know what your take is while you're running in the streets, shirtless with your titties bouncing.
Well, all I know back when Gamergate happened, I was busy gaming. I was playing Alpar. We were on server 438, 439. We conquered it after the war with the Chinese, which I found out was mostly just misunderstanding and people not being able to communicate, because I actually got killed while I was fighting a Triceratops. And a nice man on a raptor, he was coming to help me, but he killed him. And then I came back, and he gave me a cool Indiana Jones-style skin hat that maintained through that. And then I realized a lot of this BS is just miscommunication, and here's an opportunity. People don't like this person. Let's take all the low-hanging fruit, identify certain categories, groups of people that are bad. People are bad. And if folks keep on supporting us via cash donation and other things, and here's the thing, there are a lot of good folks out there, a lot of good folks, and they just want to be part of something, and they see a lot of their friends, especially during the pandemic, and they're hopping on, and they want to get acknowledged. People like hearing their names, and I mean, it helps keep people in the chat. I mean, it's almost like being inclusive is useful.
Okay.
I don't know.
Hey, Saggy, just
again, with the boomerang of the boomerang. Hey guys, what's going on? Take two. Memes here from a completely undisclosed location in the greater Pennsylvania area here. But I had some thoughts, and I just wanted to share them, get them out there on this internet stuff and things, because we can. And I also might forget what I was thinking. But essentially what we got going on now is I am an official bad games journalist. Apparently, that seems to be the case, because I took some photos of a group of folks at the Greater Amico thing there. We had a little after dinner and everything. This brought up some different things in my mind about ethics and everything. Just ethics in general, ethics in game journalism in general as well. So I had a couple of things going on. The reason why I played that little clip from Miss Mellon's that I had kind of clipped out the other day was the sheer fact of what's actually going on here. What's actually happening? It seems like there's a lot of conflict, especially after the Gamergate situation, which, as far as I know, back during Gamergate, I was busy gaming. I was playing Alpha Arc, like the clip had said right there. So apparently what had happened, you had some drama. Basically, things were done for somebody that basically was doing things that, they probably shouldn't have done. It was unethical. People were engaged in certain relationships, and it seemed like they were getting preferential treatment. That's not cool. We gotta be fair about things here. What transpired after that kind of seemed to go into, oh, look, we've got a bunch of folks. They don't like these people. Let's just kind of keep stirring the pot. And then, oh my God, can you believe what these people said about us after some of the folks that perhaps they identified within their groups as part of the other groups? Somebody said something. Somebody did something. We went beyond the pale. And you end up with the old Hatfields, McCoys, Montagues, and the whatever it is from Romeo and Juliet and everything. And I'm like, aren't these old stories? Don't we just keep kind of cycling around? Aren't we supposed to learn from the past so we don't kind of keep on doing the same thing again and again? See, I thought colloquially that was the term for insanity. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Now, when we factor in masturbation right there, people seem to be able to adapt, be able to learn. It's like, wait a second. If I do these things, people are going to click on this, whether they're outraged or they love it, and a bunch of folks will give me money. Why the hell wouldn't we do this? Now, this leads to a very interesting scenario here, because there are things you can bring up, and a lot of times folks don't necessarily even know. This is one of the things that I noticed when I went to school for business, because in order to graduate at the time from a double ASB accredited business school, you needed 3 credits of ethics. And what I took away from my ethics class was essentially, well, you're going to have the opportunity in your career to make a great deal of money doing things that are unethical. Don't do that. I just remember at the time saying, okay, I understand that, but I feel like we should have maybe just a little bit more there. Just because I know within some of my careers that I've had the opportunity where it's like, all right, I can sell you this particular product. The only difference between this roofing system that I'm writing up a contract for right now between the $25,000 roof and the $20,000 roof is the size of my commission check. I ain't gonna hate on anybody for making an honest living because all that's completely legal. It's a negotiation. Now, what ends up happening is, well, you're incentivized to charge as much as possible. Or some may say, quote unquote, the pirate's code. Take what you can, give nothing back. And what I mean by this is, all right, yeah, no, I went to the Intellivision Amico, I was invited to a little after dinner. I was told about it. And apparently it was buffet. The food was pretty good. The salad was actually quite delightful. Totally give it that. At the end, I'm like, who do we pay? Is it Tommy? Apparently it wasn't Tommy. Apparently it was someone else. And I'm like, oh, well, I got cash. Well, it was like $17 a head, 20-25% tax or with tip or something. I'm like, all right, it was like $23. Now, the thing is, I realistically probably could have gotten away with not giving that particular individual that apparently had paid for it money. I see you there, Lewis. Welcome. Thank you for joining. As well as we got LBG there as well. But we're not going to go super long, but I'd be curious about a little bit of interaction with the chat. A lot of times I just kind of go through real quick, just kind of say my things. But I'm just kind of curious about this. And I've been thinking about it for a while. And it's like, all right, well, what are the incentives? Very often, if they're people that we don't like, we assume uncharitability. Well, obviously, they're doing the worst things in the world. Why? Well, because in our heads, well, they're bad people are bad. Now, if at the same point in our heads that people we like are good people are good, we very often are more charitable as well. I see you there, Monterey. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, if good people are good, what does that mean? That means we're going to tend to be a bit more charitable to people. Whereas, well, they said, well, they were obviously joking. They weren't completely serious about this, or you're taking it completely out of context. Now, if we apply that framework to things that and people that we like, but we don't do it to folks and things that we dislike, isn't that unbalanced? Isn't that going to lead to, I don't know, the other people, the quote unquote they or them or those people doing the same thing? And if we're going to complain about it, aren't they going to do the same thing to us? I'm just saying. And one of the things that kind of brought us here was, because apparently next week, next Saturday, about 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to have on a Mr. Thad Roberts. And he's the individual that I keep on talking about that, as far as I can tell, seems like he's pretty much well on his way to help solving for universe. Now, again, we don't necessarily know, but a lot of this comes down to his analysis of the hyperbolic figure 8 knot as well as its complement. What is that? Oh, it's this wonderful thing right here that I totally clipped into myself asking a question at the Level Up panel at PAX East last year. Now, what is this? Okay, as we can see, it's got the little twisty thing. It goes in on itself. But apparently with this particular figure here, what do we actually end up taking out of it? Now, apparently with this figure, he was basically able to derive the mass, the length, the charge, the temperature, and the time of all 17 elementary particles. And the way it works is, since it has 5, I believe it's deformations there, or derangements, basically 2 of them are internal and 3 of them are external. And that got me thinking, if this might be one of the forms that makes up the basic fundamental structure of the universe, could we apply it to modern memetic theory and actually have it make sense of us? So I got started to get to thinking. I'm like, all right, if internally there are two things here, and based upon what I just said, I'm like, all right, because the way it works is, okay, let's say if things that we like or we have a predisposition about, it's what we'll get into that later, Monterey. But am I talking about the Amico? I actually am talking a little bit about the Amico. All I know is I can easily see how certain situations people would say, oh my God, you're being a total shill, or you're being a total grifter, or you're taking advantage of this opportunity. Now, if another person had the opportunity, might they take it? Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But all I know is what I'm postulating, what I'm putting out there is, let's just boil it down to there are things we like and there are things we don't like. If there are things we like, we tend to be more open to them. We tend to be more accepting. We're more likely to promote it. We might literally, via social media, be more likely to like it. If it's something that we're not a fan of, if we're not necessarily predisposed to liking something, and in fact, you could even go all the way to the degree of we hate X, whatever X might be, a person, group, whatever it might be. It might be Brussels sprouts. They tend to be quite good for you. I am not a dietitian. Now, I see you there, Matt. I see you there, Matt. We are joined by Emmy-winning journalist Matt Rogers, as well as Joe. You're totally right. This is very twisted, but we're human beings. We're perfectly imperfect creatures that are quite complex. All I'm saying is just figure out that essentially, if within human beings, there are things we like, there are things we don't like. Okay. Now, in what direction would that flow? Because essentially, according to this diagram here, if you are actually to open it up, it's technically what's called a Mobius strip. Like if you're actually zooming along this thing, while you're zooming along, it's actually twisting. It's kind of like one of those like twist ties. And basically, this is something that actually came to light and really got me interested back when Dr. Eric Weinstein was on Joe Rogan. And he said something about spinners. It's like, yes, in order for you to get back to where you came from, you need to go around twice. And that got me going like, huh? Nani? What's going on? Why do you need to spin around that thingy twice? And apparently, as it's going around, it's kind of like, all right, we got this. We got a Gatorade bottle. It's empty. Let's assume I just cut this top off. All right. So as you're going around the outside, at one point you actually tilt into the inside, but although to get all the way back, you got to spin around it twice. So it's twisted in there, and apparently things flow in different directions. Now, part of that, what leads to that balance, are the outside forces. And you have three other outside forces within this hyperbolic figure eight knot that help balance it out. What are those outside forces? Well, those outside forces, again, I am roughly postulating, are the other folks, people, and humans that we gain our memetics from. Basically, if you're within certain groups and communities, if most folks are going one way, it's like, well, just general inertia. If things are going one way, folks tend to go in that way. It's kind of like if you have water in a bucket, and all of a sudden you just start spinning that bucket. All right. It's eventually the water, it's going to initially kind of stay where it is. But eventually, as you keep on spinning, it's going to start to go up the sides. I mean, that's just a force acting upon a particular fluid. Now, if that fluid is made up of wavy particles, and we're made up of wavy particles, could it potentially be that memetics are affecting us as well? How might they be affecting us? Well, what I'm going to initially postulate right now is that if you got a bunch of folks, let's say you're on YouTube and you're kind of like me, like at one point, I pretty much watched almost every single Tim Pool content that came out. And all I know is when I would see some certain things and I would hear people say certain words, my mind would be like, oh, well, I'm hearing this. Obviously, they mean this instead. So if somebody says X, but obviously they mean Y. And I actually noticed this during a Facebook group. And at one point, I'm getting all like, wait a second. Oh, I know if I say something that maybe somebody disagrees with, they're just gonna ban hammer. I'm like trying to get all this evidence, these screenshots. Oh, look at me being persecuted. And you know what? I expressed myself. I wasn't persecuted. I came at it from a good spot. I was not necessarily stating things as fact. I'm just saying, well, this has been my experience. I was expressing my opinion. If there were particular facts, you can go to particular facts, but I think a lot of it comes down to people like engaging in conversation. People are often willing to have difficult conversations. But if you're expressing what you hold and what you might feel as a fact extremely sternly and perhaps in a belligerent, maybe kind of an aggressive fashion, or even if it's not necessarily aggressive fashion, if another person takes it as an aggressive fashion, they might actually think, oh, well, this person is trying to attack me. Now, if that happens for them, might that also happen for us as well? Might it also be that, I don't know, maybe all these pressures we're getting, let's say two of the pressures we might have here, let's just say, all right, you got folks that we like on the outside, and they're kind of pressuring us to go in a particular way. Well, because of all the folks you're hanging out with are kind of saying the same thing, is there going to be more likely for you to say a similar thing? As well as if there are folks that might be viewed as an outside group that are kind of maybe pushing you back a little bit, maybe some of them are saying some not so nice things. But if, depending on where you're getting your news from, if you're only seeing some people saying the most kind of low-hanging fruit things that might be easily criticizable, we might just kind of form in our heads the, oh my God, all these people feel this way. Whereas if you're dealing with something like these United States of America, you're dealing with 350 or so million people, it's like, oh my God, there's all these cases. Well, we see like a new one every day. All right. So 365 days a year, call it 350. Out of 350 million, I'm pretty sure you can find a case for whatever you want on a fairly regular basis about many things. Because when I had some of these conversations, yeah, no, I've had some kind of bit heated conversations, and you know what? Very often I think at the DMs. Why? Because I thought that's what adults are supposed to do. Now, it might not be as gratifying as getting one up on somebody on Twitter or something there, because now you get all the clicks and everything. And apparently you can monetize Twitter. I don't know. I just noticed the button the other day. It's like, wait, you can monetize this stuff? It's like, what? Oh, it kind of sounds like OnlyFans or just whatever. I mean, hey, whatever. It is what it is. Now, again, we have these different forces. So internally, we might be I didn't realize I removed myself literally from the stream for a minute there. My apologies. Boomers be boomering. Boomers are people too. But essentially, you got your internal forces, basically kind of how we see the world. Because we're just observers within this universe of stuff and things. So it's like, all right, we might feel kind of this way towards these particular folks, perhaps these particular memetics. Maybe where it's beneficial in some ways to other people and groups, maybe not so beneficial. You combine that with the outside forces of, I don't know, our friends, the people that we know and trust, what they're doing, and then the folks for some reason that maybe we believe are being more dishonest, being uncharitable. So that's pushing in another direction. So if that happened to be the case, there would be at least one more level of derangement, differentiation there that we got to try to account for. Now, I don't necessarily know what that is. All I know is I think the velocity of information, especially on this internet stuff and things, is so different than what we've been through historically within just adapting over thousands of years as human beings. Because let's face it, over the past several thousand years, it's like we spent most of our time communicating face to face, mano a mano. You could see into somebody's eyes. They could actually talk to you face to face. You pick up on those different mannerisms. Within about the past 100 years or so, we've managed to kind of adapt. So it's like, all right, you talk to somebody just verbally, whether it's over the phone, whether it's over the internet as well. You can pick up certain voice inflections as well. And then we have Twitter. We got Twitters. We got the Facebooks, but especially Twitters, because back in the day, 160 characters are now 240 is obviously enough to express an extremely complex, complicated thought about a highly controversial issue with no additional context. It's hyperbole right there. I was making a hyperbolic statement. Is it necessarily true? I have no idea. Don't get me wrong, Joe. It's like, the Amico was fun. Is it on the absolute top of my list of consoles to buy? No, it's still the PlayStation 5 at its $500 price point. Yeah, I know it had some like disc imaging issues or whatever was going on there as well. But the Amico, it was fun. And for what it's designed to do, it did its job. But, oh, Mr. Quinn, welcome. It's either extremely late or extremely early for you. See, we're in that quantum paradox now. I have no idea if you were awake or asleep. And at some point, I know both of those were happening. Maybe not at the same time. Perhaps they were. Sleep is another topic. Oh, I want to jump into that as well at some point. But, no. Here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. If we actually have these dialogues and everything, because it's like, do I try to be able to communicate? Because I think actually one of the things I may actually be decent at is kind of just trying to boil things down. Because I like listening to all these physics lectures and everything. Do I know what's going on? No. But you start to pick up patterns and everything. It's kind of like being immersed in a foreign land or something. You don't understand the language. If they're there for long enough, isn't that how they always said? You're supposed to be able to pick up language. You're supposed to be able to actually learn things. And I think, again, this is an extremely long roundabout to something I was just talking about a minute ago, but within the universe, we get the speed of light. What's the speed of light? It's like 186,000 miles per hour or something like that. It's like 100,000 meters per second, something like that. What does it actually come down to? Well, it's the Planck length and the Planck time. That is literally the bounds of small c, aka the speed of light. Now that's a constant, but humanity, we got our information from around the world from the paper, which if something happened in another spot in the world, okay. They would send telegrams, they would make phone calls, journalists would call people up and everything. It's like, all right, well, you have this information. You try to have folks verify it. Sometimes the information's verified. You know what? Sometimes it's actually wrong. And then it would eventually get to the papers. They'd set the presses, paper would come out, and then eventually you'd read what was going on around the world. If you had a local paper, maybe you'd find out what happened yesterday. That's how we actually took in information for a long time. And then as well as the news, similar fashion. You could actually get information out there a little bit faster as well. Plus it had higher dimensionality than just text. Because let's face it, if you just kind of read something, okay, maybe something, you hear something, it's like, all right, that kind of bothers you. But then you actually see a person and they start expressing emotion. They start feeling very passionate, and that resonates with people. Why? Because apparently we're all operating within the same great cosmic wave function that powers this universe of stuff and things. I like to think of it as the power cosmic. Some might call it the force. I suppose you could say it that. What is it? I have no idea. Just saying, the more and more I learn about science, the more and more I believe in God. I'm just saying, it seems to make a lot. But back to, if the increased velocity of information has increased so dramatically, especially in the past like 20 or 30 years, and we've adapted as human beings over the past several thousand to slowly be able to, okay, we take in more information faster, all of a sudden we're being bombarded in an area that, well, how do we adapt to it? Well, we adapted over thousands of years to try to survive. So my postulation is fight or flight sets in. Very often we take in so much information, we have so much information that to boil it down how we actually react to it, that seems like a pretty complicated thing. So it's very easy to just be like, good, bad. Why? Well, something's good. It's like, all right, perhaps I could eat this. Perhaps I can mate with it. Perhaps this thing will protect me. If it's bad, it's like, is this thing going to eat me? Is this thing going to force itself upon me and have its way with me? Is this thing going to end my existence? This is something I learned from Professor Peterson's first book, Maps of Meaning, as well as Hi MC. I don't even know what to think about this MC. I'm not sure. Wait, no. Time. Okay, it's only like 9 o'clock there. Something like that. I don't even know. Okay, I still got like 9 more minutes till it's morning. All right. You know what? Hey, beers help me. You know what? Because these are actually conversations, Matt, that I think are actually quite good for the pub. Because this is where I think a lot of the best conversations happen. Why? It's like, person at the pub that you often go down to, again, pre-plague and everything. I actually started going out a little bit more. Oh my God, it was so great to go out for a beer with a stepbrother. God, I miss those. But if you're going to the pub, I mean, you're not a big fan of everyone, you're not necessarily going to label all those people evil. Why? Well, also, you have IRL. So you, again, I do not condone violence, but you don't got to worry about the proverbial knuckle sandwich coming for you, potentially. People very often feel, let's just say, safe behind the internet, especially if they don't believe they have to deal with any consequences. Again, this is one of the reasons why I support the legalization of dueling. Doesn't need to necessarily be to somebody's end. All I'm saying is, are you as brave as Logan Paul, who got into the ring with Floyd Money Mayweather? I'm just saying, if something's very important to you, maybe it's good to have some skin in the game as well. Oh, welcome home, NC. Good to have you back. Now, let's translate this back to what the heck we were actually talking about here. So what I'm saying is, we may have some internalized forces within us. All right, what's something? Something could be good. Something could be bad. This is just the flow of life. We go through, we identify these things, and we do the best we can. Do we always get it right? No, we're imperfect creatures. But you combine our internal things, some folks within some of the social sciences may call these internal biases. I'm just saying, I think there might be actual, even more scientific ways. What I'm saying is, I've looked at some of the things that some of these people have said. I'm like, all right, maybe I want to use the same terminology, but I'm like, I think they have a point here. What I'm saying is, I think if we can better identify exactly what we're talking about, and maybe just not necessarily use buzzwords that, because a lot of these social sciences, what were they done by? It's like, all right, if these things have developed over years, when are people going to hear about it? It's like, well, if they're hearing about it in the newspaper, it's like, are you going to say a very, very deep dive into the socioeconomic and demographic things within these different... I think it might be easier to say, it's like, all right, you want to be an anti-racist, or we're going to critical race, or you're going to use these certain things. And that might grab a headline, at least on page 3 or 4. Now, when you multiply that times the increase in velocity of the internet, especially a lot of folks that maybe just casually look at it, it's like, I don't want to be racist. I don't want to be that. Oh, that kind of seems good. Especially if you just skim the headlines, it's like, that says things I like, share, post, put it out there. And regardless of whatever quote unquote side or ideology it is, I think this kind of happens. This might be why I confuse some folks as well. It's all right. Hey, Thomas, it's all right, my man. It's just, I remember that this was happening. I looked at it, and all of a sudden I'm just like, you know what? Let me invite Thomas. Because I really, dude, I mean, we still got to get together and do some things. And we just keep on missing each other like the last time we was down in Boston and everything. It's all right. Dude, we're going to meet up. But as far as a lot of this goes, it's like, all right, you got people that feel one way. And you know what? They got a lot of reasons to feel that way. You got folks that feel another way. They got a lot of reasons to feel that way too. Why? Again, we're complex creatures. We've all lived our own lives. We all have our own experiences that have helped form the world around us. Now, what actually happened? I think only really God knows. But the way we perceive things, the way we take things in, and especially during formative years, again, I'm not a pediatrician or a psychologist. I just happen to know my own personal life and remember having some very impactful events. That's one of the reasons why I like Flying Tigers. It's like I enjoyed that game. It reminded me of playing literally a stand-up arcade machine when I was probably like 10 years old or something. I was terrible at it. I kept feeding quarters and I just kept dying, and then eventually I went to go play Street Fighter or something. But I remember it was fun. Also, I get on this game, it reminded me of it. Was it a fancy like simulator or anything? No, you got a bunch of these old kind of school planes that somehow are shooting out almost these laser things and everything. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a game. We can have fun. And that resonated with me personally. Is that going to resonate with other folks? Obviously not, because in my comment section, there were folks that weren't big fans of it, and that's cool. That is okay. Let's draw this all the way back around to games journalism here. Yes, we can see. But apparently, when I'm trying to bring this back to games journalism, what I keep on coming to is based upon your perception of things. Now, when you have certain conversations and it's like you're hearing certain things through the grapevine, could you kind of start saying these things? Could you maybe do a little hint, go to somebody else, have a little leak, or do whatnot? It really does kind of remind me of Game of Thrones. It's like, all right, depending on what buttons we're pushing, depending on what we're putting out there for certain folks, all I'm saying is, I think that within this internet stuff of things, a lot of folks be trolling. A lot of folks be trolling on many different levels. It's like, on the net, the mighty net, people be trolling. Okay, I feel like that's too racist there. I can't quite do the Jamaican voice. It's all right. Hold on. I need to go back to my safe space. Where's my safe space? Here it is. That one's for Parrothead. Now, back to this. What ends up happening? It's very often you might have things that people view as innocuous, or this particular situation happened to me. Maybe somebody is looking for perhaps favorable coverage. That might be the case. Now, that person might not say that. Perhaps they just want you to be honest. Now, if a person has to be in a position of power, some folks might just say, well, that was inferred. Or perhaps some folks are like, oh, well, I meant this. This is why I say communication's important. And especially depending on the dimensionality. What do I mean by dimensionality? Again, you just got some random, at this moment here, some voice just kind of like talking to you on the internet. What the heck is this? It's showing some like blue pretzel there and some red carpet and everything and a ripped up shirt. Okay. Now we go to this. All right. Oh, look, there's a little box over there as well. Oh my God. It looks like it might actually be a human being. Now, even though I am a half-Jewish dragonkin, this internet stuff and things, got a human form too. Humans are people too. We must remember that. Now, I realize we've been jumping all around, but just I need to mentally regurgitate some of these things just so I can go back for them later as well. But what I'm saying is, again, a lot of this comes down to perception. And what I also noticed, even earlier on with one of my good friends, the Common Sense guy, at one point, I remember waking up and being like, oh, look, here's a 48-minute video about why I'm making all these terrible decisions and obviously am a bad person. Because apparently at one point it said, I thought was my friend or a former friend. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So, again, I guess I could have just gone back and just done a little rage video and play into it, but that didn't feel right. And again, everyone else kind of seemed to be doing that. So I'm like, all right, if everyone seems to be doing that, which of course everybody isn't, but at least from our perspective and the language that we use to communicate, we often say, well, everybody's doing this, even if that's not the case. That is not accurate. And you know what? If we use it, maybe we could correct it. Because again, when you put that out there, because if I'm in a lot of conservative and libertarian places, it's like, all right, it's like, oh, all these lefties, blah, 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 blah. It's like, you said all. If you just kind of say, well, do you mean, no, they're using hyperbole. And then I go on these lefty places and like, oh, all these conservative libertarians, or they're using these excuses, or they're all closeted racists and everything. It's like, all of them? It's like, well, it's like, all right, you can actually acknowledge that there might be some issues with some people and not categorize them all. Again, this is why I say we can re-legalize dueling. Let the folks that truly hate each other, if they're consenting adults, I say let them fight under the doctrine of bodily autonomy. I'm just saying it might solve many things. Again, I think it's a terrible idea, but I'm able to entertain that idea as a potential solution with still acknowledging it's a terrible idea. So let's round this all back around. So all I'm saying is, if these are perhaps some of the fundamental figures of reality itself, and we are made up of reality itself, might it be the case that depending on our internal functions, kind of like our jive for different things, whether we're for something or against something, as I was kind of even asked in one of my comment sections, or maybe someone else's comment section about the Omiko earlier, it's like, well, are you for or against it? And that kind of made me sad, because it's like, I can like something, just because I like it doesn't mean I'm going to put it at the top of my list. Just because you like something doesn't mean you need to say all nice things all the time about something. I'm just like, I don't know. That kind of sounds like zealotry to me. Now, if you want to be a zealot, by all means. But I think a lot of this is actually, now that I actually think about it, you can take the outside forces, whether they're for or against you, then add in the incentive structure. What's the current incentive structure on this internet of stuff and things? Well, in my opinion, the current incentive structure is raging out as hard as possible about people that you dislike or disagree with on the internet. Why? Because it gets clicks. Because people like that. Because people love a good dumpster fire. It's rule 14 of the internet. Yeah, you can go back to ancient Rome, bread and circus. Again, that's why I'm like, if we utilize dueling as a backstop, well, you can say all the salacious ad-homs and stuff you want. Someone's going to call you out on it. And if you don't want to accept, by all means, you can. But at that point, folks will know if you're actually saying horrible, salacious things that, well, you're not willing to have skin in the game. And at that point, it adds a form of a limiter onto individuals' memetic power. So that's just kind of how I see it there. Again, I thank everybody for coming in here. Oh, we get some stuff popping. We've got no MBR. MC hasn't insulted you. Did you insult MBR? No. Play nice. And a lot of it, I do think, I sit back and I'm just like, perhaps I'm just a broken person. Again, I totally jumped out of my dad's arms when I was a kid. Apparently, I hit my head. See, I like to think of it as kind of like a Son Goku thing. Maybe it helped me in some way. Rather than being a malicious, bloodthirsty marauder, maybe it turned me into who I am. Now, you can completely argue that this is a worse occurrence. I will totally accept that. But all I know is, oh my God, no. You guys are going to have to wait till we actually legalize it and or go to Washington State or Texas. Because apparently, at least I heard through the grapevine, again, I'm not an attorney in either of those states, that as long as there's basically a police officer, someone to witness that somebody doesn't actually cut to a... All I know is Phoenix Jones was literally a street crime fighter there. All I know is these things happen. But just what I'm thinking as far as James journalism goes, I think we've kind of taken an industry that sound like yeah, there was totally some fair criticism to go around. And then we just kind of turned into a cottage industry of, well, obviously these people are bad. I don't really care what side you choose to take it up on. It's like each side has a reason. Well, these people did this. Well, these people did that. These people then did this. These people then did that. And we end up attributing what some people do to what all of those people within a particular category do. Now, in order to explain that, it's probably going to require math. Math is hard. And all I know is I should probably learn some math and become a numbers guy, because the guy I got coming on next week that's basically the closest that I've seen to basically solving for universe said he wasn't a math guy, or excuse me, a numbers guy, but he became a numbers guy in order to figure this stuff out. And I am pretty dang impressed. But, let's see you there, Shellback. We support our Turtlekin friends here. Because
낮에는 따사로운 인간적인 여자 커피 한 잔에 여유를 아는 품격 있는 여자
turtles are people too. But just wanted to get my thoughts up there. I thank everyone for joining me now and in the future, which it will take a little bit longer than the plank time, which I've calculated a couple of videos back in case anyone cares to figure out how. Yeah, it's in the catalog. We'll be having the guy that basically, at least according to him, predicted the mass, length, temperature, charge, and time of all 17 elementary particles. I'm just saying, these are exciting times we're living in. And no matter what happens, everybody, peace out, be safe, and...
How do you know if any of this stuff is true? How do you know someone didn't just make it up?
What? You mean just lie? You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
I just mean that some of the details...
Whoa, I never thought of that. This is terrible. What if none of it's true? What if they're all lying? How would we ever know?
Have you guys checked out the Memes of Destruction's channel? He's an interesting